You are listening to the Intelligent Racer Podcast, where we look to educate and entertain the endurance racing community through discussions with racing professionals and elite age groupers.
In today's episode of the podcast, we speak with Gwen Jorgensen. She's the reigning Olympic gold medalist in triathlon and recently announced that she is focusing on the marathon for the next Olympics. I'm also joined by a special co-host, my wife Ariel. Both Ariel and Gwen recently gave birth to baby boys, so we thought it would be great if they spoke a little bit about their experiences as it relates to sports and training. I hope you enjoy. Gwen, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thank you.
So I'm joined today by a special co-host, my wife Ariel. Ariel, also welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Gwen, thanks for the time. So I'm actually going to kick it off today because we actually just wanted to start with a material life change that you just experienced, which actually I have as well.
So I actually just wanted to start off by speaking about your pregnancy, both prepartum and postpartum, because I think it's something that we haven't yet discussed with people on the podcast. So first off, just really quickly on prepartum, though I want to focus on your current training. How did your body react to it versus your expectations? I remember reading on social media that you were still running 5-minute miles very late in your pregnancy. So were you able to maintain your fitness level that you expected? And how did it work out relative to your expectations?
Yeah, I think expectations are an interesting thing. And going into the pregnancy, I kind of had no expectations. And I'm really glad I didn't have any. I knew that every pregnancy is completely different. And for me, I actually felt really good when I was running, and I was able to run a lot. I actually ran more than I had ever run. I had a couple 100-mile weeks, which I had never run over 70 miles a week before that. So it was quite interesting that while I was pregnant, I was able to do so much running. And as well, I was able to increase I was able to have some solid workouts as well, like running at a quick pace. But I would say like the last 2 months were, pretty, I had to bring down my training quite a lot, just got a little awkward to run and actually had a little tear in my Achilles, I think, from the extra 30 pounds. But it was kind of fun.
So it sounds like you had both positive and negative reactions.
Yes. I would say like everyone. For me, it was, everyone had said, get in the pool. You feel your best when you're in the pool when you're pregnant. And for me, I actually felt my worst. Oh, okay. I had really strong stomach cramps for some reason when I'd push off the wall or try to give an effort. So I just think, with pregnancy, it's something that every woman is different, and every pregnancy, I think, is different probably as well.
Maybe he was trying to help you push off the wall and just wasn't doing it very well.
Maybe.
So,
were you able to stay active? Were you able to stay active throughout your pregnancy?
I tried. I actually wasn't able to run after about 14 or 15 weeks. So that was kind of my challenge, was how to keep my cardio up, even though I wasn't running, and, tried to swim a little bit and biked as long as I could until the seat hurt too much. But that's actually a good transition. Is, I think, for me personally, the hardest part of being postpartum is my complete loss of cardio. I remember my first run, my legs actually felt okay, but I thought my lungs were just going to jump out my chest. So how did it work out for you? How did you feel in those initial workouts, and how has your training progressed?
Oh man, I feel like I'm the complete opposite of you. After giving birth, I probably had 7 weeks of, it definitely was 7 weeks of zero running. I, with Stanley, had just a few complications, I would say. And, I had trouble, walking to the toilet for over 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't able to run for quite a while. And the first run back that I did was a 1-minute run, 3-minute walk times 4. So it was super just, getting back into it. I felt like my insides were going to fall out. I felt super awkward. My body felt like I didn't feel like myself at all. So for me, I felt like I kind of had the cardio there, but I didn't have, it was like my body forgot how to run, which was silly.
And how long was that after?
That I went for my first run?
Yeah. How many, 4 weeks, 6 weeks?
Yeah, it was about, I think, 5 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds similar. Is there anything that you would recommend to people based on your experience? I mean, you mentioned before, which I now know, that every pregnancy is just so different, but any kind of tips, for other people who are getting back into it, including myself, given that you're a month ahead of me?
Well, I think, actually something that helped getting back into it was while I was pregnant, I actually did a lot of strength work, which isn't something I normally enjoy, but for some reason when I was pregnant, I actually enjoyed going to the gym and doing strength work, and I felt like that kept me strong and was able to help me get back into it. But I think the biggest thing is just being kind to yourself. Like, giving birth it's pretty traumatic. It's a hard experience, and everyone has, I think, they recover at different rates, and some people have C-section sections, some it's vaginal and natural, and it's just all these different, everyone just goes about it in a different way. And I would say, don't compare yourself to others and really be kind to yourself. I know that for me, it felt like I was doing run walks forever, and I was just like, am I ever going to be able to just go for a run? And it comes back quickly. Like, I'm now, Stanley's almost 4 months, and I'm running about 70 miles a week and feel like I'm making progress and feel normal running. And, I'm able to do a few workout type things. So it seems so slow at the beginning, and it feels like you're not getting anywhere. But I would say just be kind to yourself, but don't rush it. That time will go quickly. And as well, just kind of enjoy. I kind of liked the first weeks when I couldn't run, just because I got to actually spend time with my little boy. I mean, it was just kind of nice.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. And, I just one other related question is, you sound like you have a lot of good ideas, the strength training, et cetera. Were you able to figure all this out on your own? Did you work with your regular coach, or did you have someone special advising you?
Yeah, I asked a ton of people. And I found the most help from pelvic floor specialists, and I'm actually still seeing a pelvic floor PT specialist, and, it's been 4 months, and there's still work that I need to be doing to regain core strength. So I think when you're pregnant, it's good to talk to somebody who knows about that, because you can have pretty bad ab separation if you do incorrect or the wrong type of ab work. And then after you have the baby, there's just a lot of things that are going on in your pelvic floor that you need to reactivate and just get back to normal. And I've found it so beneficial to have a pelvic floor specialist help with exercises, with helping to stretch scars, with just making sure we're turning on the right things. And, it's been, I feel like, tedious. I've had to do a lot of, exercises that are, for me as an athlete, like, I want to do like more, harder, like see a difference. And I'm doing like these little things that are, less than even like a Kegel. And I'm like, is this even doing anything? But it's really helped just to get my form better and to make sure that I am going to heal. So I would say the biggest tip is you find a pelvic floor specialist and see them.
That makes a lot of sense. That's actually a really good recommendation. I haven't done that yet, and I definitely should.
You need to, yes.
Have you been back on your bike? Have you been back in the pool? I mean, obviously, I was going to ask the next question about how I saw you were in the pool with your son, but in terms of real workouts. I have actually. It was interesting. I felt okay riding after I gave birth. I felt better riding and swimming than running. So I actually did a little bit more of that early on when I couldn't run yet, and I felt actually pretty good. And even in the water, I had a little extra buoyancy, so I think it was a little bit easier. I have been both in the pool and on the bike. And so I alluded to it, but I saw some really cute photos of your family down at Island House, and it was Stanley's first time in the water. So are you going to turn him into a swimmer or triathlete? What's your plan?
No plan. He loves being outdoors, which I love. My husband and I, Patrick and I, we don't want to push him in any direction. We want to expose him to a lot of different sports and just kind of let him choose. But I do think we'll definitely teach him how to swim. I think that's a really good just skill to have. And I think early on as well, just learning, being on the swim team even early on in life, I think gives a really good cardio base. And if he hates it, fine, he doesn't have to do it, but we'll probably, start him in it and then see if he likes it or not.
I totally agree. It's funny. Adam's spoken with a bunch of people on the podcast who grew up swimming, and it's unbelievable how strong triathletes are when they started with swimming. We've seen that in our experience with some of our peers and our various teams that we've been on. But I agree. I just think it's a great start. And, it's obviously something you can do anywhere, regardless of the weather. So that's positive too.
Yes, that is nice. Yeah. And it's like you said, like swimming, it's something where if you don't learn at an early age, it's actually really hard to learn older in life as well. So I think it's also as well, like you have to hold your breath, and it's a full body exercise. You're working your arms, your legs. So I think it's a great one to get involved in early. Yeah, but they also have to get involved in ball sports, because like my hand-eye coordination is horrible, and especially a little boy, I'm like, you need to learn some of that at least.
Maybe some tennis. That's good hand-eye.
Yes.
That's fine. You mentioned getting your head underwater and stuff. I noticed in your video you kind of blew on his face and then dunked him in. Is that a trick for getting babies to like going under the water?
Well, technically the best way to put them underwater, so when babies are young, I can't remember the exact month, but I think it's like 6 or 9 months, they have a natural reaction where if you put them underwater, they hold their breath no matter what. Mm-hmm. So blowing in their face actually gets them to close their eyes, that's basically all it does. And the best way to actually put your baby underwater is to have them horizontal and just bring them down gently. But for some reason, Stanley didn't want to be horizontal. So we're like, we're just going to dunk you. And he actually kind of liked it being dunked. So, yeah.
He looked like he took it like a champ. We haven't put our son in the water yet, but we definitely want to as soon as possible. And we'll use that trick. All right. Well, I know Adam's very eager to speak with you about your transition to running, so I'm going to turn it back over to him.
Thanks for talking.
All right. So, Gwen, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about your big announcement that you made recently. So, you won the gold medal in the last Olympics in triathlon, and now recently you just announced a transition to focus on competing on the marathon distance for the Olympics. So, can you just talk about that decision a little bit? I mean, there's, like, let's take Jan Frodeno. He won a gold medal, and then he made the decision to go into longer distance triathlon. I mean, did you think about that same sort of decision? How did you come to a decision to say, I'm going to go and try to do the marathon?
It's something that I've actually thought about for quite a while. I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, I first mentioned to my husband, Patrick, I said, I would love someday to actually train for a marathon and see what I could do. The Olympic distance triathlon is about 2 hours, and if you're world class in the marathon, you're running, 2:20. So, I'd say comparable time, but it's a completely different sport at the same time. But anyway, I've had that thought in my head for a few years, and it had just been on the back burner because I was focusing on focusing on Rio. And then after Rio and winning the gold, I wanted to have a family, and then they announced that they were going to, for the ITU, have the relay in the Olympics in Tokyo. And that almost made me like, oh my gosh, maybe I want to stay in the sport. Like, this is so exciting. That's something I really would want to be a part of. But after having Stanley and thinking about it, I really just wasn't motivated. My motivation to go abroad for 9 months of the year and train for something that I've already accomplished just didn't excite me.
Speaking of, I guess, marathons, your first marathon, I believe, was the New York City Marathon, right? A couple years ago, you did after, just sort of as a more of a casual kind of experiment, right?
Yep, that's very correct. Yes, I remember actually when I was deciding if I was going to do it, I had talked to my triathlon coach, Jamie Turner, at the time, and I was like, I don't know if I should do this because I'm not going to be prepared. And like, I always go into a race prepared. But, it's actually kind of fun to do a race and just feel like the general public where, you have other stuff going on and you kind of train on the side. And I felt like I actually could connect with everyone else who was doing the marathon. Yeah.
Actually, Ariel also did that same marathon. So I was out there cheering for her, and I saw you run by as well. So it was awesome. It was really cool to see you and her and everyone else. But it was kind of exciting. So, I mean, what did you feel like when you finished that race? Was it just sort of, oh, it was fun, good experience, or did it sort of feed anything to the ultimate decision to say, I'm going to focus on marathon competitively?
I finished that race and I remember being really disappointed. I know that I didn't put the work in, but at the same time, I wanted to do really well. I wanted to be competitive. I had, run in the elite field, and the time I went, it was like 240 something, 241, 242, something like that. So, I knew and I know that to be competitive on a world level in a marathon, that I would need to drop 20 minutes or more. And so that was a little daunting, and didn't really know, like, do I want to do this or not? But just the more I thought about it, and when I was pregnant, I really just did a lot of thinking, and my head and just my motivation, I just knew that I wasn't going to be successful if I wasn't motivated by something, and I'm motivated to try in the marathon, and my motivation to try in triathlon wasn't high.
And so, speaking of sort of, triathlon's a multi-sport, obviously it's swim, bike, and run, but, what are your plans for training? Obviously, I've listened to other interviews, and I know you're 100% all in on this marathon training, but are you going to use the bike and the swim as cross training and recovery and stuff like that? Or, are you still going to kind of use those sports to help you train?
So right now I have to, because I'm not running that much. So I am swimming and biking as cross-training right now. But the goal is, I believe, to be world-class, I need to fully immerse myself. And, I'm going to be running 120-plus miles a week. And I'm going to, with that kind of mileage, not going to really have time or energy to cross-train.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So like right now you're using the other sports, and then as you ramp up the volume and your body can take more of the impact, you'll have to ramp those other ones down and solely focus on running.
Exactly.
So, one of the things that it's interesting because, I'm an amateur. I'm an amateur triathlete and trail runner. And so, for me, I sort of made the decision this coming season. The last few years, I've done a few Ironmans and half Ironmans, even a few Olympics, but I'm purely, an amateur middle of the pack type of person. But, I made the decision this year that said, for me to best balance the newborn and sort of my family and stuff, I felt like running had the most flexibility, and I could do it from home, and I, didn't have to worry about pool times. And I know you did some, like you mentioned, you've done some training with a team, out away from home. And so was that a big factor in terms of the decision and saying, running allows me to do this from sort of, close to home and be able to kind of be flexible enough to be around?
I get that question a lot, actually, and I don't think anyone believes me when I say no. But it didn't play a factor in my decision at all. For me, I know that I have to fully immerse myself in the sport of marathon, and that's going to be just as much time and energy as it was for triathlon. I'm going to, at some point, have a group I'm training with, and we're going to be going to altitude camps, which is going to be away from home. And as well, from a time standpoint, I've actually found I'm doing so much prehab, and I'm getting treatment every other day just to keep my body healthy because running this many miles can really break down the body quickly. And for me, I know that I need treatment. So I'm getting treatment every other day. I'm doing prehab for like half an hour before every single run. And so if you run twice a day, that's an extra hour. And then I'm also doing, afterwards, I'm doing, additional stretches and strength work and things like that. And all those little things add up to about the same amount of time as if I was doing triathlon.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about this kind of prehab and your ramp up to 100 plus miles a week in running. So I actually on this podcast have quite a few ultra runners on the podcast, and we often talk about, how do you kind of build up that base to be able to not get injured doing these things? And so just, to explain a little bit about what you are doing in this prehab and sort of, what strength, what recovery, what injury prevention stuff are you doing now besides just making sure you kind of hold back the volume and ramp it up slowly? What else are you doing?
Well, getting treatment every other day, and that's anywhere from massage to chiro to dry needling. I see a PT 1 to 2 times a week as well. And then, one of those PTs is a pelvic floor specialist. So right now, a lot of, this may not relate to all your listeners, but a lot of the prehab I'm doing right now is, I'm just sitting there and activating like my transverse abdominals, which is a tiny muscle. You don't have to do much to activate it, but it takes me, 5-10 minutes to do those exercises to get it activated before I start doing any movement. So doing things like that, a lot of glute activation as well before runs, just to make sure I'm firing the right muscles. And then after a run, I'm normally really weak in my glutes, so I do a lot of strength work in my glutes, so clamshells and monster walks, things like that post-run. Pre-run, a lot of, dynamic drills, I guess, just to make sure I'm having the right form and waking up the right muscles before I start a run, and then some dynamic stretching as well before I hit the road.
Right. Yeah, my coaches this will be music to their ears, because they often prescribe me monster walks and clamshells and all that kind of stuff, because it's really valuable stuff. So this is going to be a huge endorsement for them, and I'm not going to have an excuse to skip. So thank you for that. But I wanted to just understand, not to go into too much detail, but the dry needling aspect. So I actually had that done once because I had a hamstring issue. I'm just curious, kind of what you view from a tool perspective, what you view that as helping, and just how do you, when do you know you need it, and that kind of thing? Because it's a topic I haven't really touched on the podcast. So I just briefly wanted to hear a little about it, since you do use that.
Well, I do not feel like I am a doctor or in any way versed to give a full medical reason to have it, but for me, I can give you anecdotal.
Yeah.
For me personally, I, especially when I ramp up my mileage, anytime I take a break and come back to training, my calves get super, super tight. And I found one of the only things that helps them quickly is just getting dry needling done and, getting in those muscles. And a lot of times, the needle goes in, the muscles are twitching. They leave them in for a little bit, they pull them out, and normally I'm sore for maybe, 5 hours-ish afterwards, but then I feel amazing, especially the next day, like after I sleep, after getting work done, and then I wake up and it's like the muscle has released, and it just, I feel like a new person. So, for me, just anecdotally, that's something that works really well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it definitely helps kind of release the muscles and things. That was kind of what's happening with my hamstring. I too am not a doctor or qualified to talk about any of that stuff, but it is interesting, and I just wanted to cover it. But back to your training. So, do you have now like a roadmap in terms of like, if you go, do you know what your training is going to look like week to week from here until, let's say, the end of 2018, or are you more of the type of person that wants the coach to kind of give you a shorter range picture? Obviously, things are going to adjust and change, but I'm just curious, like, how much of a vision do you have where you're going to be at the end of next year and so on, in terms of volume and that sort of thing?
Yep, I would love a plan and a vision, and it all mapped out right now, but I just have a few balls in the air. We're looking at joining a group, having a good training environment. So there's that, and I think once that happens, I'll have a coach and be able to sit down with them. I do have a PT that's been helping, just with this return to run since giving birth. But for me, every week is so different, and I hate not having a race calendar, because for me, like as an athlete, the reason I do what I do is because I love racing, and right now I have no race on the calendar, and it's just driving me nuts because I feel like I'm training to be fit for no reason.
Right.
And it's so frustrating as an athlete, but I think it's really good because it forces me to listen to my body, especially postpartum. You just have so many things going on. I'm breastfeeding still, so I have a lot of hormonal things going on in the body as well. Relaxin is still floating around, which can affect joints and all these other things. So for me, I have a PT that I'm kind of, bouncing ideas off of from week to week. But for instance, like this week, I had been increasing, anywhere from 2 to 10 miles a week. And then this week I actually cut back and went like 4 miles less than I went the week prior, because I had, just my quads and my calves were getting a little bit tight, and I just wanted to play it safe. So, I guess not having a race on the calendar has allowed me a little more flexibility and just being able to listen to my body. And I think that's so important, especially postpartum.
Yeah, I was going to ask because, like, without having that kind of plan and coach in place yet, and I guess you're just so in tune with your body. Obviously, you're a professional athlete, and I guess you have the discipline to say, "Hey, I need to pull back a little bit." I mean, a mistake a lot of amateurs make is, especially if they don't have a coach, is they start to overtrain, and then it becomes a big issue later. But it sounds like you're really in tune with your body. You really pay attention to it, and if you need to take a break or pull back a little bit, it's something you would do, right?
Yes, but with that being said, it's not just something that amateurs struggle with. Elite athletes all the time, myself included, I want to push more. I want to do more, and that's why I kind of have this. It's exactly why I have this PT that I've been bouncing ideas off of, because I know if I didn't have someone kind of pulling back the reins, I would be definitely, trying to run 120 miles next week and get injured. And I think one of the hardest things about being an athlete is listening to your body and knowing it's really hard to learn, is this tight muscle a good thing and I want to push through so I can get stronger, or is this tight muscle going to, pull on the bone, which is going to possibly, contribute or cause a injury to the bone. And, it's hard to know the nuances like that. And, even an elite athlete, a lot of times you don't know, normally 9 times out of 10, a sore muscle is fine. But it's that 1 time out of 10 where it could cause a bone injury or something detrimental where you'd have to take even more time off. So, I'd like to give myself a lot of credit that, yes, I'm just perfectly in tune with my body. But, I think I'm very good at being aware of niggles, but it's hard to know a lot of times if that niggle is going to turn into something worse or if it's, something you can train through.
Yeah. So I would be kind of remiss since my podcast, I have a lot of triathletes on here too. And so I know that, I have one of the, best all-time triathletes on the podcast. And even though you're sort of focused on going into marathon running now, you have a brain filled with great information. So I just wanted to talk about a few triathlon things real quick before, we're almost out of time. The first thing I wanted to ask about is the Olympics. And this is not a triathlon question. It's a more general question. But the thing that always boggles my mind about the Olympics is it's every 4 years. I understand you as a professional athlete have other big races, world championships, other things, but the Olympics is on a step of its own, and it only happens once every 4 years. So, how do you, handle, before the race in the Olympics? I mean, how did you handle the stress and the expectations? Because, if it doesn't go right that day, if you have a mechanical or something else, you have 4 more years until you could possibly win a medal again. I can't wrap my head around that kind of stress and how you're able to manage that pre-race to just kind of have the race, that you want.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was, I found I was really actually relaxed leading into the Olympics, and the year before we had a qualifying event, and I was so nervous for that event, like beyond nervous. I had gotten a mechanical in 2012 at the Olympics. So the qualifying race, I was like, what if that happens and I don't even qualify for the team? Like all this work for 4 years, and then I can't even make it to the team, super stressed. But actually the Olympics came, and I remember being in Rio, telling my husband and just saying, this is the most relaxed I've ever been before a race. And I think it was a few things: really good preparation and really good support team. I think those were the 2 things that allowed me to just kind of be calm and at peace. I had felt like I had the best team around me. I felt like I had prepared the best I could, and I was just, I was ready to race, and I knew that I was in great shape, great form. I knew that, as well. Waking up on race day, I probably wasn't going to feel 100% because what's the likelihood that you're going to wake up on this one day that you trained for 4 years and feel great? You're probably not going to feel great when you wake up on that one day.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had put the work in, and I was just ready to put it all out on the line.
Awesome. Yeah. I just, when I stand up, I'm an amateur and I stand up on a race that I know if, hey, this day doesn't go well for me, I can always have one next week or next month, but, and the stakes aren't that high, but I freak out anyway. So I'm just I'm always curious about that. So I always ask that sort of question when I have someone on who, has been in the Olympics. But, I guess one final question I said you wanted to kind of circle back to triathlon real quick is, do you have, a lot of amateur triathletes listen to this podcast. a few tips. So whether, training, I know it's a broad question, impossible, large question. And I know I don't want to take up too much of your time, but a few tips, kind of things you learned throughout your triathlon career for an amateur, someone who's, either starting the sport or trying to get to that next level, anything that were kind of key things that throughout your career, you're like, oh yeah, that's one or two things that why I had the success I did.
Yes. Find a good training group. Training with others is something that really elevated me. I, tried to surround myself with people who were better than me and who were my direct competitors, so I could see on a daily basis what needed to be achieved to be at that world level or whatever level you want to be at. Train with people who are at your level or above your level, and it not only motivates you and shows you what you can do what you need to do, but it also is fun. It makes it a lot more fun to have training partners. And as well, if you're having a bad day, they'll probably have a good day. And then when they're having a bad day, just vice versa. You push each other on those bad and good days. And then another thing, I think that was I feel like there's so many things that were helpful. But another one is I really focused on the process of things instead of the outcome. And I think this is one that's really difficult, especially for triathletes for some reason. Triathletes are really focused on, numbers and outcomes. And, if I'm in the pool, I need to have a send-off and I need to hit this time. And for me, the past 4 years, our coach really instilled to focus on the process. And there's no point in, if you're trying to go 110s in a 100-meter, pool swim, there's no point in going 110 with bad form. Maybe you have to go 113s or 115s with good form, and then you'll get stronger with that good form and eventually be able to get that time down, which will, in the long run, be more efficient. I feel like I'm just babbling, but basically, I think triathletes, they focus too much on the outcomes, and we need to be more in tune with our body. We need to be focused on the right technique because every day is not going to be your best day.
Yeah.
And if you focus on the process and doing technique right, you'll be stronger, and in the long run, you'll be better and more efficient.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I mean, Gwen, thank you so much for your time today. Both Ariel and I are huge fans of yours. And so this is the first time she ever kind of co-hosted on my podcast. And it was because, because you're the perfect guest for that. So, we both really appreciate your time, and, we're both very excited to kind of cheer you on and follow your journey as you go on this marathon adventure.
I really appreciate that, and I hope you guys are getting some sleep with your little baby boy. Are you?
Yeah, it's every day is a little bit different. So people ask, is it getting better? I'm like, well, it depends which day you ask us, but it's all good.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to the Intelligent Racer podcast. For more information on this and other episodes, please visit www.intelligentracer.com. Also, be sure to check us out on social media, and please review us on your podcast directory. Join us next time for another edition of the Intelligent Racer.